Hello, and welcome to the Sacred Sister podcast, where we normalize the magic
and sacralize the mundane. My name is Britt.
And I'm Hannah.
And we are so excited for this episode today.
Yay.
What are we going to be talking about?
We're going to be talking about the elements, the 4 elements plus 1, so 5 elements, and how they are showing up in our everyday life and what it means in the physical realm and also what it means inside of us. So how are they influencing us and how can we connect with them?
And what do they do for us whenever we do connect with them?
Mm-hmm.
And how often are we able to connect with them? Every day. Every single day. So we are super excited to dive into this topic today. Before we do dive in, I want to invite everyone who has not yet subscribed to this podcast, please to subscribe on whichever podcast streaming application that you are utilizing. And also, why don't you share this with someone? If it is deeply resonating with you and you feel that you have a friend or family member that either you've been wanting to open up communication with on these deeper spiritual concepts, or if you just feel like they would like it. No rules as far as the sharing goes, but we would greatly appreciate it, and we are here to serve.
Yes. Yeah, and so before we start, we just want to mention too that this is our first season, and in the first season we want to focus on laying down the foundations for the upcoming seasons. And so we talked about what is a spiritual person in our first episode, and we just talked about what are masculine and feminine episode in our masculine and feminine energies in our last episode. And in this one, we're really gonna lay the groundwork on how can we work with the elements, what do they mean, so that we can, from then on, always refer back to this episode and you can really build on this foundation, build your own experiences on top of that knowledge that you're getting today.
Exactly. We also want to mention, which I feel like we've done a good job communicating in episodes past, but just that the things that we're talking about on here, whether we're sharing our own personal experience or education that we have picked up along the way, we never intend to give any information that is like set or like the ultimate knowledge. We just want to offer this information to you for you to take what resonates, to leave what doesn't resonate. Who knows, maybe, weeks or months or years from now, you could listen to the same episode and hear a completely different episode because you have completely different life experiences. So please just pick up what you want to, leave what you don't want, and just know that there are no hard set rules to anything that we're communicating and talking about, which for me is one of the most inspiring parts of a spiritual practice, that Yes. There are no rules and no boundaries necessarily.
Yes, only the ones that we create for ourselves. Right?
Exactly.
Oh, sacred sister, a kindred flame, may we light one another. From the ashes rise, oh, we rise, oh, again.
Before we get started and dive deep into this episode, let's go into a little meditation. And this is something that we like to do in the beginning of every episode so that we really allow ourselves to ground and be present. And this time, Brittany will be guiding us through a meditation. So,
Yay. And I'd like to offer before I begin the meditation that even if you are, whether you're a seasoned practitioner or if this is literally your first time sitting with meditation, know that this is another practice where there are no rules. And really what it is that we're looking to achieve is a moment of relaxation, a moment of clarity, long inhales, deep releasing exhales, and really just slowing the central nervous system so that we may more fully allow ourselves to drop into the present. So, wherever you are, I invite you to come to a comfortable seat. Perhaps even shifting from the left sit bone over to the right. Just seeing how you feel from one end of the body to the other, one side to the next. Starting to get the very slightest inclination of how the spine is feeling today. And then when it feels right, starting to rock forwards on the sit bones and tilting yourself backwards. Just the slight shift of the pelvis, and if you'd like to, you can start syncing your breath to it as well. Perhaps inhaling and the pelvis rocks forward. Exhaling, feeling the tailbone gently tucking underneath the pelvis. And whenever it feels right for you, you can come to a place that feels just right. A place that feels balanced from left to right and front to back, so that you may invite in the idea of support, of balance, of easeful seating. And from this neutral pelvis, feeling the spine, gently stacking the vertebrae one atop the other, all the while gently inhaling and exhaling through the nose. On your next inhale, I invite you to gather the shoulders up at the ears. And as you exhale, gently melting the shoulder blades down the back. We'll do this 2 more times. Big inhale up. Exhaling, feel collarbones reaching toward the sides of the room, that feeling of open chest. Exhaling, feeling shoulder tops to earlobes, spacious, light, and free. Traveling upward, up the spine now. Give a gentle dip to the chin, dipping the chin ever so slightly into the chest, so that you may feel a feeling of elongation in the cervical spine, the upper spine. And I invite you now to envision from the very crown of your head a thread, a string that is pulling you upward to the sky. And on the exhale, feel the sit bones rooting deeper into the earth. So that with each inhale, you feel yourself raising higher and taller. And on the exhale, you feel grounded and more stable. I invite you to let your breath cycle flow naturally in these next few minutes. Seeing if each inhale you can gather one last sip of air at the top of the inhale. Really filling up. And on the exhale, pressing the low ribs together. Seeing how deeply you can press the lungs closed. notice at the base of your body, where the body comes in contact with the earth, you start to feel little flickers of flames on the tops of feet, at the sit bones, at the back of the pelvis. And this flame, this fire is cooling and feels delicious against the skin. Imagine that with each inhale, you're feeding this flame and it grows. With each exhale, you feed the flame even more, almost as if it fans the flickers of the flame. And gently it climbs up the thighs, up the waist, past the shoulders, and the next inhale takes you fully under, over the crown of the head. Imagine that you are in full oneness of all the desires of your being, the burning passions, see yourself as this vital fire. Able to transform all that it touches. And now you start to feel a cooling sensation of raindrops falling from the crown of your head onto the shoulders, rolling down the arms, onto the hands, coming down the legs. A gentle morning mist, a morning shower. Such cool and chilled, freezing raindrops coming from the sky, filling you with vitality, cooling your flame, gently extinguishing. Each inhale invites the rain to continue dropping down upon you. And if you'd like to, even lifting the chin ever so slightly up to the sky in order to receive these pieces of water from the heavens. And you notice it coming to a pause, slowly halting. And notice that a gentle breeze has started blowing past you, drying your body, flowing through your hair, almost as if a message saying that the winds of change are upon you, and that from every moment to the next you are able to shift in whatever way you choose. That each moment, everything and anything is within our grasp, if we are open to receive. invite you to lengthen your next inhale. Exhaling, sigh it out. Gently bringing small, slight movement to the body, wiggling the fingers and toes. And whenever feels good for you, please rejoin us and open the eyes.
Thank you. I think it's always so amazing how these little visualizations and connection with the body shifts your being and shifts your surroundings, and after you open your eyes, it's like you're in a different room. It's like the room is fuller because your aura is bigger, you're stronger, you're more powerful, you're more grounded, calmer. It's amazing, the imagination of the mind.
I was just gonna say, and it's all imagination. It's so funny how, as like these human adults, we can sometimes like demonize imagination. Like it doesn't matter, or like it doesn't really exist, like it's not beneficial to us. But really, imagination is literally everything, and more and more things are coming out now that in order to succeed and achieve so many things in your life, visualization is such an important practice.
Yes. Oh yeah. It's literally everything in our lives. Like, we visualize our future, and so we can visualize our future and worry about it. That's a visualization too, and we do it on a constant basis, right?
Very powerful.
Very powerfully. But at the same time, we can shift those worries. And there's this quote that says, worry is a misuse of imagination. So if you are able to worry, you are able to imagine amazing things as well.
Exactly.
It's your choice.
And it's not like one is more like responsible than the other. A lot of people kind of justify their worries by saying that, you know, it's being responsible.
Yeah. Well,
all depends on your perspective.
And to a certain degree, it is good to have doubts. It's good to have worries. If we drown in them, but if it gets to an excess, and we're gonna dive right into all that stuff with the elements and everything, because that's the excess of air in this case. We're gonna touch on that even more. So let's see, what is like an overview of the elements, and why would they be important? What would you say? Why are the connection to the elements important in your life?
Well, I'll tell you what. I was telling Hannah that I am so excited about this episode because the play that the elements have had in my own personal development and growth and transformation have been so vast. I feel like when I first started linking together these cues of just how much I could feel the elements and their personas within myself, within my life, it started helping me connect to what I feel is my true nature. And by true nature, what I mean is who I am at the core of my being, and creating a healthy boundary and a healthy separation between this 2019 super technologically advanced modern world where we can get super comfortable spinning on this hamster wheel, chasing the things, chasing, you know, what society says that life is supposed to be about, and just keeping ourselves very connected to what society thinks about us and our lives, and playing these roles in our lives as well. And what the elements have allowed me to do is get more curious at who I am and how the elements show themselves in my life. And this is what I feel like is such the gift and such the blessing, and how we can learn from nature's infinite wisdom in any moment that we choose.
Yes, beautiful. Yeah, and as above, so below, and you've probably heard that saying before, but with when we look into nature, as above, so below, as within, so without, when we look into our outside surroundings, we see the elements, and we have the physical experience of the elements, the fire, the air, water, earth, but also these elements also present themselves within ourselves. And that's where it is such an amazing tool for self-discovery, self-exploration, and even like bringing balance into our relationships as well, becoming aware whenever people are like, "Ooh, he's like fiery today, he has a lot of fire," knowing that how can we balance that out with what element we can bring into it to maybe bring more of a balance into it, which would be water.
Yeah.
Like if there's too much fire in the room, bring in a little bit of water, bring in a little bit of that emotional world, and
or even earth, even providing the tinder so that the fire has some place to sit and to rest and doesn't have to be so fiery.
Yes. And then even knowing if you bring an air to it, which would be more like the talking and the words and the details, maybe you could even fire the other person up even more, because if you bring in like a little bit of air into a fire, it becomes even bigger. So knowing like if you're in a heated argument, air element is not necessarily the best to make it go, to cool it down.
As an air sign married to a fire sign, my Aries husband, I know this well. Okay, but I digress. We are getting ahead of ourselves here.
So let's go back to the basics of what is it really, what do they stand for? So we have fire, earth, air, water, and then we're also going to be touching on the fifth element, which is ether. And so the fire stands for the spiritual realm, the earth for the physical, the air for the mental, the water for the emotional. So the water is the soul, air is the mind, earth is the body, fire is the spirit. And what is also pretty cool is that we can see that even in the physical states of anything that we have in our lives, really, because it's either plasma, which is fire, it's either matter, which is earth, it's gas, air, or it's a liquid, which is
water,
symbolizing the element water. So that is that. So you have a little bit of an idea where we're coming from when we say this is really, this has a lot of fire in it. We're talking about the spirit. It has a lot of spirit in it. It has a lot of desires and enthusiasm and creativity and inspiration. And we have a few things which is really fun. We brought up a few sentences or little sayings in English where we use those elements on a regular basis and we're not even necessarily aware of them, but it's so common in our language. So let's talk about that.
That sometimes it can be overlooked. So basically, should we just go through? Should we just, and then we can talk about them a little bit. So how many of us have heard these sayings before? Play with fire and you might get burned.
Fired up or fiery.
Put a fire under it.
Burn out.
Burning the candle at both ends.
A heated argument.
Yes. We all know these things. We all know fire. We all know fire within us. These are the ways that fire can show up within us.
Yes, it's really these desires, these burning desires, as you said in the meditation too. It's like we literally say burning desires.
Did I say burning desires?
Yeah. And I was like, yes, burning passions and desires. It's literally what fire is. And if we have too little of it, we have a low drive, low confidence. Let's go into the inner world, basically. Or what do you want to say, what happens in the physical realm?
I thought it would be really fun to talk about like the physicality of the elements and the ways that they benefit us or do not benefit us if they're excessive or deficient. And then we'll talk about what they look like inside of ourselves. So when we have too little fire, as people, we're cold. And we are without cooked food. So we're not being benefited in that way. And the way that it would look inside of us is
that we would have low passion, low drive, low confidence. We just don't have this fire within ourselves, no enthusiasm, and we would be literally cold. That's what we called, we called someone, oh, he's cold. It's because he doesn't have that fire of passion and zest.
Excitability. Yes. When we're in harmony with fire, we are able to enjoy all the provisions of warmth and food. We can have fires in our kitchens, in our houses.
Candles even.
It's funny because I was just thinking like, oh, that's kind of like gas also, the way that we are in our modern civilization now, that we use gas for propane for fires. So
yeah, fire and air work both together. They're friends. Fire and air, and earth and water. And we talked about that in the last episode. Fire, air are masculine energies, and earth and water are feminine. So if you haven't listened to that episode, check it out.
This is the first episode where we get to say, find it in our previous episode.
Yes. So when we are in harmony with fire, how does that look like in the inside? It means that we are creative, we can express our passions, we shine our light.
And we
good about it.
Yeah, and we know the boundary of not burning ourselves out, and we have a healthy balance of fire. Because what happens if we have too little? We want a little more, and what happens if we have too much? We get burned, and we don't want that. So
yes,
we definitely want to have a healthy balance.
And we even say it, when we have too much, we get burned out. And like again, in the language we're using, the burnout syndrome, and it's because we've put in a lot fire into our lives and not enough of the water or earth, the feminine energies. And so we get burned out. We may have anger outbursts, even like get red in the face, like literally.
Red in the face, that's one too, yeah. And then what we wanted to provide at the end of each of the elements is a little ritual or exercise that we can utilize to connect with fire element, especially if you're not familiar or if this is a new concept to you. Do you want to talk about the first?
Yeah, so what I like to do with how I connect with fire is through sun gazing. And so the biggest fire that we have on Earth comes from the sun. And we can really use that time, and I would recommend using the time like between sunrise and between the first hour after sunrise, and then also the hour before sunset, because that's when the light of the sun is gentle enough for our eyes. So we don't want to get too much fire and get burnt in our eyes or destroy anything. But yeah, so this is what I do. I put one hand, let's say I start with the right hand, put it on my right eye, and open my other eye up and look towards my nose, so that I don't look directly into the sun, but I look towards the nose. And then I breathe in the sunlight, and I imagine the warmth, the heat, the light, the passion, creativity, just going into my body and allowing my aura to shine brighter with each breath.
I love that. I had never heard about that practice before until you told me.
And then you switch eyes. and it's actually, sun gazing has actual health benefits. Like you can look it up. It's even scientific proven if you're like into that. If you need science to help you believe something. Validate, yes. And but yeah, it has amazing benefits. But especially if you started out, I would really recommend like right after sunrise or right before sunset. So you make sure that the light is gentle.
So the way that I utilize fire and connect with it really deeply, first off, my Mars in my astrology chart is in Cancer in the 12th house. And this, for me, means the way that I love connecting with fire most deeply is through nostalgic release, I suppose, reflection, self-reflection. And the way that I connect with fire is anytime I am wishing to connect with that element inside of myself, I light a candle. And this candle of presence helps me as like a as like a signpost. It lets me know, okay, I am devoted. I am entering my devoted state. I am lighting myself present. I am placing my phone far, far away or on airplane mode, putting on like a binaural audio track that has super ambient music, and basically just allowing myself this devoted time to dive into whatever it is that I feel like getting into, whether it's, you know,
creative.
Yeah, just some kind of creative release, some kind of connecting to the things that I am passionate about in my own spiritual practice. And it can be as minute or as elaborate as makes you feel good. Literally, like, you can connect with fire in literally any way that feels good to you. We're just offering some ideas in case you are newer to building your own spiritual practice. And even if you have your spiritual practice, it's always fun to try out new things. It's always fun to try out new exercises or little pieces of new experiences, you know, bringing those into your life. And I think what's really fun with the fire element is too, we're so used to seeing candles in spiritual settings. And if you think about, fire is representative of the spiritual realm. Like, you know, we go to church, we see candles. We go to a temple, we see candles. We have an altar, there is a candle somewhere. When someone crosses over, we light a candle. Like, it's so common in our everyday life because fire connects us with that spiritual realm. Yeah, even right now, as we're recording this, we have a fire that we have lit to call ourselves present to this episode, and I just want to say I have been taken by staring at the flame. This is another really cool practice. If you haven't tried it before, try it, because the color of a flame, there's literally nothing like it in except fire. It's got this like alive color in it that you can't ever just like take a marker or a color pencil or a piece of paint or whatever and recreate that exact same color. It's like a vibrancy that is so alive. It's spiritual. It's magical. Yeah. There's nothing else like it.
Yes.
Okay, so that's beautiful. Fire.
That's fire. Let's go into earth. Let's talk about, where do we use earth in our language?
You better get both feet on the ground.
Or you lose ground.
On moral grounds.
Or you drive oneself into the ground.
Yes, lots of ground.
Lots of ground. Or earthy. Yeah, earth is all about like foundation. Being practical, solid, fertile. Hardworking, like very sensual and very connected to the five senses, abundant, really allowing that physical abundance to be in our lives, grounding ourselves, having plans and structure in our lives. So all that kind of matter, earthy, solid stuff in our life.
And we're not going to touch on it too much today, but each element that has come up, I so badly want to touch on the astrological signs that correlate to the elements. A lot of people don't know that we have the 12 astrological signs, and each of them ties to an element. So since there are 4 and there's 12 total, that means that 3 signs each go to each element. And that is another fascinating conversation that we are going to be devoting an entire episode to in the future.
Yes. And we can even just mention them for Earth.
Sure. Let's start with fire, since we just did the fire.
Perfect.
So those would be Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius.
And Earth is Capricorn, Taurus, and Virgo. Just so we have a little bit of an idea in that regards. And like Britt said, we're going to dive deeper into those signs in later episodes. But what happens if we have too little earth?
So too little earth, and we are without a surface to live on. We're without any place to stand.
Yes.
And we have a hard time functioning without earth.
Yeah. And very simple. And for us, how it looks like inside of us, if we have too little earth, we feel like we don't have any structure in life. We feel like we're losing ground. We don't have that foundation. We don't have a plan. We don't really know how to ground ourselves.
Yeah, feeling ungrounded.
Even like unabundant. Almost like feeling poor in different areas in our lives. Doesn't necessarily have to be financial, but we can be feeling poverty in different areas and not accessing that infinite abundance. So that is symbolizing by the earth.
And when we're in harmony with the earth, we can coexist with it and utilize its many benefits, nutrients from our food, from plants, from life in general, and we can
experience abundance, feel grounded, and be in the present moment.
Yeah, feel balanced.
And when we have too much of earth,
and what happens if you get too much earth on you? You get buried.
Yeah.
And you can't breathe when you're buried. You feel
no fun.
Yeah, too much sand on you is super dry.
You feel stiff. Too much earth is also making us stubborn in a sense, or possessive even. Just really dry and bored with life, feeling stuck.
Earth is our material world, our material plane, the physical reality, the life on Earth, sorry.
Yes, and when we feel stuck like that, it helps to bring in some water, some water element, because then we can re-fertilize the earth. And when we have too little earth in us, and we feel like we need some more of that element in our lives, what can we do?
Do you mean
as a little exercise?
Oh, yeah. So the ritual exercise would be to connect with the element of earth. You could do this in a myriad of ways. You could do it by earthing, which is getting out in earth, taking off your rubber shoes that keep you from connecting fully with the earth. You could do it by hugging trees. If that sounds weird to you and you just did like an eye roll, I feel like energetically I just saw some people rolling their eyes. Try it, because it's alive. Like forests and trees in general, every living thing that is connected to the earth has so much to teach us. The wisdom that's in a forest. If you haven't been out to a forest, luckily we have one right over here at Mount Charleston in Las Vegas. You can disappear into the forest and just be in the stillness of the forest, feeling and understanding how connected we are to like society and this unnatural world in a city. And all the while, those trees are just in the forest, just growing at a super slow, at the perfect pace for them.
Yes, and all connected and helping each other out, like the root system that goes so deep. It's scientifically proven to be better than antipsychotic pills, antidepressants.
I believe that.
So yeah, go out into the forest. Even just going to a little park and just touching a tree, or going barefoot on the grass or putting your hands on the grass. Gosh, I love doing that.
Yeah, this is where we bring back that idea of like, you work with what you can. You do what you can with what you have.
Yes.
I feel like there could have been a lot of thoughts just now talking about the forest that people are like, well, I don't have a forest, so I'm not able to do the grounding. But there's earth someplace.
Yeah, you can buy a plant.
Yeah, buy a plant and bring it. Oh, that's a really good practice too, to connect with the earth element. I have tons of plants in my house.
Yeah, and getting your hands like into the soil. Oh, it's so healing too.
And we haven't touched on this a ton yet, and we're going to be devoting maybe not an entire episode, but some part of an episode to crystal healing as well.
Yeah.
Super, super powerful practice, and crystals are made of minerals of the earth in very specific temperatures, very specific conditions, and I feel like it's been very, very popularized and sensationalized, the crystal healing world. And it can provide some eye rolls as well, but we hope that we can share with you some of our personal experiences that we've had with crystal healing, and hopefully illuminate your scope a little bit.
Yes, and I even want to expand on that any mineral can be so helpful and can be used for that as well. It doesn't have to be like a beautiful looking crystal in a sense, but we can just find a really cool rock and be like, oh, I really feel connected to this rock, and I allow that rock to influence me, or to maybe listen to its wisdom. And it may sound crazy, but it works. It's if you allow it to.
If you want it to, yeah. It will meet you halfway, but it's not going to be some prescription like you pop a pill and it affects you whether you want it to or not.
Exactly, because if you don't believe in it, you block it, and then it has a really hard time to connect with you. Yeah.
Exactly. If you're sitting there with crossed arms like, you need to fly off the shelf towards me before I believe in you, like you're going to be standing there for a really long time.
And that's okay.
Sounds like a stubborn thing. Too much earth.
Too much earth, yes, totally. Totally. All right, let's go into air.
Yes.
A breath of fresh air.
The winds have changed.
It's all up in the air.
My head's up in the clouds.
Airy fairy.
Oh, I know this one so well. So many years.
Gemini.
Yes, so many years were lost in my head with many heads of mine in the clouds. It was very, very hard to ground myself into the physical reality. And for many, 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 many years, I wasn't really able to associate myself with my Taurus cusp sun that I have, which once again, we'll talk about astrology in a future episode, but Taurus is that earth energy, that groundedness that I had never been able to understand and feel in my own reality. And instead, I was just this totally scatterbrained, always in my head, full of anxiety kind of person.
Which is too much air. And one of the signs would be like, Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius are the 3 air signs. And the air is all about, communication, thoughts, curiosity as well, clarity,
imagination, intellect, innovation, doubts and worries. These are all the things that happen within our heads.
Yes.
These are the things that we think up.
Yes, the mental realm. So if we have too little air, what happens?
Well, we suffocate because we can't breathe. And we are asphyxiated.
Yeah, and if we have too little air within ourselves, we're kind of similar to suffocating. We don't allow ourselves to speak out. We don't allow ourselves to use our voice. We have communication problems. We may be not able to express our thoughts.
Even like speech impediments.
Yeah. So what if we are in harmony with air?
In harmony, we can breathe freely. We can communicate our truth. We understand the things that are inside of us that want to be communicated outward, and we understand that each of us has a very specific message to convey, and it doesn't have to always be a verbal message, but any sort of creative expression.
Yes, yeah, it's thoughts, mental thoughts and words. Really, that's what the air element is helping us with.
So really it would be like any piece of art, really, because you have to like think of it first. You have a concept artistically that you want to convey.
Yeah.
And then whatever medium you choose to allow it to be expressed is your medium.
Yeah, and air is also, since it's a masculine one, it also looks into the future. So we touched on that in the last episode, that masculine is future, feminine is past. So with air, we can really easily look into the future, and that's where a lot of imagination and innovations are actually coming from, because people like literally look into the future and be like, that's where the idea comes from, and then they put it into action through earth or through water, whatever medium they are doing it through.
I just want to touch on this too, because a popular thing to talk about in the spiritual community is of the future self, of communicating with the future self. And it can be easy to do the eye rolls to that idea too, because it seems like this airy-fairy thing. And
which is the higher self, the future self.
Yeah. And it can be just the most powerful way to communicate with like that all-knowing. Each of us knows that that is within us, right? Can we just clear that up right now? There is a piece of us inside that no matter our circumstance, situation, adversity, anything that's going on inside of us, there's a piece of us that knows the answer, that knows the right answer that will serve us the most. Now, we can resist that as much as we want to, for as long as we want to, entire lifetimes sometimes. But if we so choose, it is there.
Yes.
And it is always communicating to us. And sometimes maybe you might be kind of removed from it especially if you like weren't shown an example of it in your life, or, you know, whatever your circumstance is. If you say, I don't really have that inside of me, there are ways to grow it for sure. And we've already touched on some of that in this series, but we will in future episodes too.
Yes. So let's go into what happens if you have too much air.
Wow. Too much in the central nervous system and your vision are affected. I did some research on this a few days ago, and it's called hyperoxia, where too much oxygen, you're getting too much oxygen to the brain. And it's not good.
Interesting that the vision is affected, because the vision is the fire, and which is like helping us to see ahead and where we're going. And too much air, if for us, inside of us, makes us feel confused, spaced out. It's like really hard to ground our ideas into reality, and we are worried, anxious, just too much stuff going on in our heads.
Yeah, like we can't get anything out. I remember, for just as a really, really quick story, whenever I was having like my epiphany moment from being totally ungrounded and coming down and getting grounded, the very first experience I had of that, I had this rant before I went into the exercise with a friend who was helping me ground myself. And I was like, I feel like I have so much inside from like years and years and years of stories that it's just so much stuff inside of me. I feel like I literally just can't ever tell one story from start to finish. And she led me through this grounding thing. And for the first time in my life, friends, I was able to have this experience where I relayed the internal processes that were going on inside of myself that correlated to the story, and I was able to communicate those outward too. And I was just enmeshing like my physical reality experiences and the internal experiences, and just laid out this beautiful story. And it was my first time, and the next morning I woke up just like, oh my gosh, if I commit myself to this grounding thing, I feel like my life's gonna change.
Yes.
And I still have that video too. I love it.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah, it's so fun.
And it shows too how astrology can be so helpful in that too, knowing like what elements do we have more in our lives. But you can also intuitively feel into it when you know which element, what it stands for. And then kind of think about, how can I bring that back into balance? Do I have too much of it? Or like, because then as soon as we have it in balance, everything flows through us. The channels are open.
Yeah, and each of us is composed of our own like spectrum. We're someplace on the spectrum in all of these elements. So it's up to you to figure that out, what it looks like for you.
Yes. And so the ritual or exercise to connect with air is, for me, what I like to do is breathing techniques. And I mean, there is just a bunch of breathing techniques out there. One that I like to do is I place my middle finger on my third eye, and then I use my thumb and my ring finger to first take one, push down on the right nostril and breathe in through the left one, and then take my ring finger and push down on the left nostril and breathe out through the right one. And I go back and forth. So you basically have this flow of air between your nostrils. And that's one of my main breathing exercises that I love to do. But it's also, I mean, there's just so much. It's really just about connecting with your breath and allowing that the breaths to become deeper and longer and just become more aware of that breathing.
So can I touch on what's going on for the body when you're doing that practice?
Yes. Please.
Cool. So the breath technique that she just described is called Nadi Shodhana. And what Nadi Shodhana does for us is when you have that right nostril covered and the left nostril open, you're feeding the right brain. And when you have the left, conversely, the right nostril is going up and feeding the left brain. So what we're doing is providing equal amounts of breath up to the brain, both hemispheres of the brain. And what it's doing is able to slow down your central nervous system and bring you into that more calm state. Because sometimes our breath can get so out of whack. I was talking to my husband, telling him the episode that we were going to do today, and he was saying like, oh, well, what breathing techniques are you going to touch on? And I was saying, well, I guess it's a good idea to let people know that there are hundreds, if not thousands, of breath techniques. And you can utilize them for literally anything. For getting calm, for waking yourself up in the morning and feeling more vital, for slowing down and preparing for sleep, or just for calming and relaxing. There's something out there for anything and everything that you need. There's the connection that we have to our breath and its importance to us is paramount. It's huge.
Yeah. And again, you can create your own.
Yeah.
There are no rules. They're just, guidelines or little ideas on how you can do it. But it's really, again, we can create our own way of connecting with that air element. And another way is, for example, just standing in the wind and really noticing the flow of the wind, like touching your hair, touching your skin, and just really allowing that air to go through your body. Love to do that too, especially in storms. Oh gosh, I love storms. Or like the calm before the storm, when the air is just like so calm right now, and you can just feel this light breeze, and it's about to go down.
It's about to go down. I wanted to touch on something as we're still touching on air right now. So this is a fun way to think about how air is affecting us in terms of breath as a nation and as a world. So when a lot of people first come to yoga or introduced to breathing techniques, a lot of times the feedback that you'll get afterwards, and as a yoga instructor, I can say from my personal experience, these have been the conversations, is that when you're done with a practice, people say, wow, I never realized how shallow my breath is. Shallow meaning they're not taking those really full deep inhales and pressing those full exhales. So what a lot of people don't know is that at any given time, if you aren't committing yourself to those really deep breaths, 40% of your lung capacity is just being recycled. No, it's like sitting in the lungs. It's not getting fully released. It's stale. It's stagnant inside of your body.
It makes so much sense.
So the lungs are what's able to draw like that new breath, new life into our bodies with every single moment. And
the winds of change.
But but also having those really shallow, fast-paced breaths doesn't allow the central nervous system to calm itself in the same way. And when you have a shallow breath, you are more susceptible to that fight or flight response where you're like on edge. Like what happens when you get really scared or you're like anticipating something? Something that really happens quickly is that your heartbeat increases and your breath rate increases. You're like taking more shallow breaths, like breathing faster. So I just want to offer that as a little thing, especially if you're prone to anxiety. In those moments, the next time, I encourage you to see if you can really just take even 5 full breaths, really, really deep exhales, big expansive inhales, even taking one more last sip of air at the top of your inhale. And let me know, please, how that feels and affects you.
Yes, let us know, please, how any of these exercises resonate with you and with the elements. We would love to hear from you. And we're going to add our email address on the bottom too, so you can send us your message, please.
Yes, I didn't realize that we still had water to touch on. I thought air was the last one.
Yes.
Let's go, water.
Water! So water runs deep.
Be in deep water.
Going with the flow.
Test the waters.
Water under the bridge.
Turning on the waterworks.
Or this is a German one, and it's called He's Built Near Water. So when you are built near water means that you are easier prone to cry.
Can you say it in German?
Nah am Wasser gebaut.
Say it again.
Ich bin nah am Wasser gebaut.
Oh, that's all. Say it. Say it again.
Ich bin nah
Ich bin nah
am Wasser gebaut.
am Wasser gebaut.
Beautiful.
Oh, I speak German, y'all. And let it flow is the last one.
Yeah, so we can kind of see how water connects with our emotional realm. Tears, I mean, really easily. Like when we are emotional, we cry. And we literally bring out water out of our body. It's also governing our intuition, our nurturing abilities, our dreams, our psychic abilities, our sensitivities, and just our ability to go with the flow and to surrender and just be.
Like to be carried on a stream, huh? Yeah.
Allow the water to guide you wherever you need to go.
What a beautiful testament that little bit is on being guided in life. By allowing your intuition to play a more significant role in the decisions that you make throughout your life, especially the big decisions. The big decisions are huge.
And I love this scene from Pocahontas. Do you remember that scene where she is on that crossroads and she goes into the river and she says, like, you can't step into the same river twice because it's ever flowing. And then she goes into the crossroad and there is one, it goes into like it's like calm waters, and then the other one is there are more rocks, but it's more fun for her. And she basically makes her decision if she should marry that guy or if she just go if she should just go with her dreams and follow her dreams. And she ended up going with the more rocky ones, but she was intuitively guided to do so.
And what a beautiful depiction, just going off of that, is that there was the really clean, clear stream that was super, like, unexcited. Kind of like you know how it's going to go. It's super, super chill. And that would be, like, the way that society wanted her to go, that her dad wanted her to be married off and stay in the native tribe family. Or maybe he was a part of another tribe, but whatever. Not getting frickin' married to John Smith, that's for sure. Or she could choose that super alternate path where it's like not clear where she's gonna go, and she's probably gonna have some rocky stuff ahead. And she chose that way. Yeah,
and she just surrendered to it. So Pocahontas is such a beautiful movie to watch in regards to elements.
If you haven't watched, homework. If you haven't watched Pocahontas as an adult, you should.
So let's go into what happens when we have too little water.
Okay, so too little water, and we can't live, because as humans we have to be drinking water. We are made up of about 60% water. Our plants need water, animal life needs water, and fun fact, babies under 1 year old have a higher water percentage, and also men have a higher water percentage than women.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And if we have too little water in our inner world, which that means that we feel disconnected from our emotions and from our intuition. We have a hard time expressing our emotions, going deep, diving into those depths within ourselves, being that reflective. And
Doesn't it make so much sense? It's
Yeah.
like just thinking of too little water. It's like not deep. Yeah.
Yeah, it's shallow.
How many of us know what a not deep,
Superficial.
what a not deep person, not person, but everybody has everything inside of themselves. But, you know, people that choose to express themselves in that way.
Yeah. And it can also be a phase in our lives, you know,
Yeah.
where we just have little water. But if we are in harmony with water, we are
well hydrated. We are looking dewy and good.
Yes.
And we are able to thrive. We have a good balance with our emotional body.
Yeah. And then when we have too much of that water,
We drown.
yeah, we literally drown.
And plants, whenever they're overwatered, they can get root rot and not be able to, you know, be healthy.
Yes.
So there is such a thing as too much water for sure.
Oh yeah, and if you think about water being the emotions, if you have too much emotions, you drown in your own emotions in your own depression and grief and blame or guilt and or all nostalgia as well, because water is feminine, which means like really living a lot in the past and not allowing ourselves to see the surface and the beauty of what else is out there.
And what is right now.
Yes. Yeah. And the water signs are Cancer and Pisces and Scorpio.
And a ritual exercise to connect with the water. Do you want to share yours first?
Oh, yeah, I love that one. I do a shower meditation. And it's basically just, I take a shower and I just imagine the water really coming down and not just cleaning my physical body, but also cleaning my emotional body, my spiritual body, just cleaning my mental body, like just allowing all that water to wash away, kind of similar to the meditation that we had, like really allowing it to wash away all our worries, wash away the tensions, wash away stuff that we picked up from other people. Because you have to think about, just as we walk through life and pick up dirt and then we have to clean ourselves, we also walk through life and we pick up dirt from other people, dirty thoughts, dirty emotions. Just especially if you're an empath, you are more prone to picking up all those energies from the outside. And it's really, really important that we think about cleansing ourselves and allowing that water element to flow through us and really, make us clean again.
I love that. That's a really beautiful, beautiful practice. I think for myself, I kind of touched on it earlier, but I'm the queen of crying. I can cry, especially nowadays in the last few months. I can just cry in any given moment. And it's been an interesting thing to find balance in, because tears are so healing and they feel incredibly healing for me as well. And I want to feel healing instead of feeling this, like, to release tears is to address the sadness that is already inside.
Yeah.
So in any given moment, I have the choice of saying, okay, am I going to let myself open that drawer that holds the sad stuff inside? Or is now maybe not the most appropriate time? And it's rarely not appropriate for myself. I just cry so much because I don't know, I just do.
And you can even cry tears of gratitude.
Yeah, 100%.
And those are so beautiful too, to cry.
Yeah, I cried tears of gratitude probably equally as much, especially now, because as sad as I am, the moments of gratitude where I'm just experiencing such peak beauty in life is like cryable material for sure, because it's just like, oh my God, life is so beautiful. Yeah. Yes, there are atrocities going on in the world, but also the beauty.
Yes.
Very important to regard.
Yes. So these have been the 4 elements. We touched on all the 4 elements. We did it.
What a journey that was.
What a journey. So now let's go into the 5th element. Last but not least, the 5th element, which is called the ether. And it's literally probably the most important element in a sense, because without it, there would be no other element. It's basically the space that holds all the elements within it.
Mm-hmm. It's everything.
Mm-hmm.
And what I was just thinking of is also the internet. That the internet is such a prominent thing in our lives, but we can't see it. we don't know how it gets around.
Yeah.
But it gets around.
And it connects us all. Yeah. Very similar to ether too. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's very true. Like, ether is really that space that we cannot see, and it is that, well, we can call it divine, you know, if you want to go into the sacredness of it, or if we call it really just this consciousness that is connecting us all, that is within us and surrounding us.
Mm-hmm.
And so how can we connect with that ether?
Well, we listen.
Mm-hmm.
We create space.
Mm-hmm.
We see the space in between everything and anything.
Mm-hmm. So this is a little exercise that I do. Is I look at the wall, and I find a point at the wall that I look at, and then I look at the point halfway between me and the wall. And so try it, and it's really fun to do, because you see it, you're like, basically open yourself up to something that your eyes can't focus on, but it's like this other field that is surrounding us at all times. And this is, by the way, also how you can do scrying or mirror work. When you sit in front of a mirror and you look into between your eyes, like usually around the third eye area between your eyebrows, and then you look in between a space between you and the mirror, and you just allow whatever comes up come up. So that might be like a fogginess come up, or like any feelings within yourself or vibrations, or even any visions. Mm-hmm. Like I had really fun stuff coming up with mirror gazing, just like seeing myself morphing into different bodies, different lifetimes. But that's one of the ways to connect with that space in between us. One a really fun exercise.
I feel like that would be a really fun practice to touch on whenever we do a spiritual practices episode. Mm-hmm. Initially, what came up for me just now when you said that was like, oh, wow, I wonder if a lot of people are going to think that that's like an evil practice. Mm. And that is just something that I am going to be very excited to touch on, because every tool in practice can be used for pretty much anything. Yeah. And it depends on the intention of the person that is doing it.
Exactly.
And also opening yourself up to various energies in any given practice is also something that people need to be very well aware of. Mm-hmm. And this is where spiritual protection comes in as well, which we are going to be in depth covering in future episodes.
Yes.
So, it was interesting whenever we were running through our notes of what we wanted to touch on in this episode, because whenever we said create space for the ritual and exercise, I asked Hannah, what is it that you mean by that? Because she wrote that down, and I said, do you mean creating space in oneself, like feeling internally spacious? Or do you mean literally creating space as far as boundaries go, and knowing how to create like separation between yourself and toxic people, toxic environments, getting into like relationship boundaries? And this is another place that we wanted to touch on, where everything that we say can be perceived in any way that you perceive it. And once again, there are no set rules, no set boundaries. If something for you comes up at all in this episode that you are thinking of something that we're not touching on, it doesn't mean that it's not validated. If anything, we want to also utilize these episodes as diving boards for you to dive into your own intuitive nature. Mm-hmm. and to get a grasp on how you feel about anything that we're talking about in yourself. And it doesn't have to be the same as us.
Yes. And this is our action guide for you for the next 2 weeks until our next episode, is to try out a ritual exercise to connect with any of the elements, ideally with all of them if you want to. but you don't have to. You just feeling out intuitively, where do you have any imbalances? Where do you feel like you have low element or a lot of that element? And try out some of those exercises that we said and, see how it works for you. And maybe create your own. And share the ones that you already have that we didn't touch on that you would love to try, by the way.
Yeah, that's another reason that we love sharing these things with you. We said about maybe trying new things of other persons or just gaining insight, but also just understanding how vast of ways that we're able to utilize these practices is. It just broadens the scope of how deeply complex and individual each and every one of us is. Each of us is having our own super, super, super unique experience in life. And by us offering our experiences with the practices that we have, we just hope to be broadening that scope of just how varied we are as human beings on this earth.
Yes, and that's the beauty. We are so individual, but also we are so
similar.
Yeah. And it's this beautiful balance. And let's touch on our next episode, which we're going to be talking about.
Yeah, you just wrote that down. News to me. Our next episode is going to be on spiritual practice. Cool. Super excited about that.
We were talking about it. We didn't necessarily wrote it down, but we were talking about we really wanted to talk about spiritual practice. What is it? What does it mean? Because we've both, interestingly, went through a lot of comments or a lot of things that have been coming up in our environment where we noticed, wow, there is such a feeling of this is the right thing to do, this is the wrong thing to do. Mm-hmm. And especially in the spiritual community on how to do spiritual practice. And
the way to receive enlightenment or up-leveling your own consciousness.
Mm-hmm. And there's so many rules out there, and we just want to talk about the rules that are more like guidelines, but also talk about the misconceptions in certain spiritual practices, just as we were saying, scrying might be something that has an evil connotation to it, or tarot readings, and just really talking about those misconceptions and being what is it really, how can you use it, and how can you create your own unique spiritual practice that works and resonates for you.
Yeah. Beautiful. I'm excited. I'll be here. I'll be here. I await the days.
Yes. We'll both be here. And we're looking forward to for you to join us as well.
Thank you so much. We hope you have a really beautiful rest of your day and that anything in this episode was insightful for you in the slightest.
Yes. Thank you. Thank yourself again for making that time and space in your life to allow yourself to connect with those elements within yourself and surrounding you.
Indeed. Until next time.
Yes, see you.
Namaste.
Namaste.